if I can, I'll use samples from the kit, and something that I've tried to do, and in my head it should work, but it never sounds. I don't know why I've never had as much success with it as it as it should have in my head. But I'll take like really hard snare samples from a session, and I would have like triggered the snare just with all the hard hits, and then just splice in all the rolls to be natural. But I found just not doing that for the consistency of the tone of the snare. Um, just treating a real snare track like a real snare track. But yeah, I'm not shy with using triggers, and especially with today with like slate trigger and multi samples, that if you're pay attention to detail on like fast snare rolls, and you might have to edit a certain hit on the audio to trigger like a louder or softer hit, um, that you can lean on samples a bit more and still have a natural feel. But yeah, I'd like to try and use samples from the kit and as much real mics as possible. But when it comes to samples, um, I always just would rather use just one as opposed to blending them, and I will just create my own blends of like either one shot samples or multi samples where um, so I've got like 6 or 7 good hits from a kick drum from a session. If I want to make a sample of that and I want another sample blended in, I'll just make the samples with the blend that I like, just so I'm not dealing with loads of different tracks. And especially when you're doing a record, I don't mix in the same session, so I'd rather have less like layers of samples in that regard. And I sort of like to just pre-make samples if I'm going to blend sounds in. The whole TCI like slate trigger file will have that blend done already.
When you're creating the snare samples and you've got clean hits from the kit used for tracking, do you focus more towards the room mics or the overheads or the spot mics or a blend of?
Just close mics. But one thing that can really help a performance if you're using a lot more of the actual just real snare track is triggering the room mics. So as a trick that I first heard about that from Andy Wallace years ago. I think it was about a System of a Down mix he did. But if you get the consistency of the room mic sound, it can balance out the inconsistency of the close mic, and it doesn't obviously sound as sample heavy because it's like an ambience that you're sampling as opposed to a close mic, which is like really obvious to hear the fakeness.